Once again, good luck and congratulations. It's now my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Miss Andrea Myles, who is an alumnus of the University of Sydney and a member of the university's Business School Advisory Board. Andrea Myles is a China specialist, holding a Bachelor of Science Neuroscience from the University of Sydney and 2 Master of Arts degrees in International and China Studies. She co-founded the multi-award-winning bilateral incubator program, the China-Australia Millennium Project. This is a leading platform which connects the best and brightest in China and Australia, forming trusted relationships between future leaders. She's been named one of Australia's 100 most influential women by Westpac and the Australian Financial Review, and as the University of Technology Sydney Alumnus of the Year. In addition to the University of Sydney Business School Board of Advice, she sits on the City of Sydney Chinese New Year Advisory Panel, University of Technology Sydney Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Industry Advisory Board. She also co-founded the Sydney Roller Derby League, so I won't stay in your way any further. Andrea Myles, it's a great pleasure to welcome you back to the university and to invite you to deliver the occasional address.
Well, thank you very much for having me here and for the opportunity to share some wisdom with you today. 悉尼大学领导、贵宾、毕业生、你的家人和朋友们，下午好。Thank you. Professor Masters, Presenting Dean Susan Thorpe, university staff, distinguished guests, graduates, your family and friends, thank you again for inviting me here today to give the occasional address at this graduation. I'd like to acknowledge that we meet today on the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, a nation on which I was born, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I've been asked here today to share insight I've gained since sitting in your seat. So I've titled this address, 5 Tips for Surviving Life After Graduation. Now, when I studied here, I was in fact a very average student. In fact, I barely could have been worse and still gained my degree. When I did gain my degree, I knew how to be 3 things. A punk kid from the countryside of New South Wales, a scanner of groceries in our supermarkets, and how to be a neuroscientist, sort of. My problem was, though, that in my gut, I knew I no longer wanted to be any of these things. And I felt really lost when I graduated. I didn't know what to do with my life. I knew I didn't have a purpose to the experiment of my life. But like a good scientist, I knew what to do about it. I needed to input more data. So I saved my pennies and headed off to China looking for new and rich experiences for a 3-month backpacking trip. It was 2002. I couldn't speak any Mandarin at all. I had no prior overseas experience whatsoever, and I was traveling alone. The experience I gained on that trip changed everything. And since then, my career has been pegged to China's rise. Tip 1, your career will change direction many times. Keep yourself agile. I graduated in neuroscience, but I ended up a China specialist. My career changed directions in order to find my purpose in life, but I didn't die. I had to be open to the uncertainty contained within that change and to give myself space to figure it out. Tip 1, keep yourselves agile. Tip number 2, learn Mandarin. Yes, it is hard. Do it anyway. It is worth the effort in the benefits, the relationships, the impact that you will have across your life. I started learning at 23, so there is no excuse. As we know, China has risen, digital is here, and everything is changing. The single most resilient and transferable skill that you can have over the course of your careers is the ability to communicate face-to-face with the 1 in 5 people on the planet that speak Mandarin. For an Australian at this stage of your career, this skill will be pivotal. If you already speak Mandarin, know that you hold a critically important skill, unlocking success in your future career. Australia needs more people like you, like us, who can build bridges between both nations. If you are an international student, know that Australia is a place that has fallen in love with you as much as you have fallen in love with it. And at very least, myself and indeed this university will always welcome you. So tip number 2, learn and use Mandarin to build bridges across the world. Tip number 3, find your purpose and you will change the world. As I mentioned, I barely passed my degree here at Sydney Uni, but after becoming deeply fascinated with China in my subsequent 2 master's degrees, I got high distinctions across the board. But high marks or gaining degrees aren't your purpose. They're just boxes that you tick along the way. Discovering your purpose will see you do the most impactful work of your life. So let me just talk briefly here about what my purpose looks like. Within China, I discovered a universe of change within one country. A powerful economic journey unfolding, brilliant, funny, kind people who were so much less other than my country upbringing had raised me to believe. In China, I was a tall, blonde, weird, working class, monolingual fish out of water. And I experienced what it is like to be other, which was a very healthy lesson. I found what compelled me and I felt it at a cellular level. Tip 3, find your purpose and you will change the world. So, my world had changed. I'd gone from lost graduate to purposeful employee. I had passion and I was excited to start my big life. I landed one of the top China jobs in this country. I got to know the Prime Minister and ministers and heads of the biggest companies in Australia, and I had a front row seat to every industry in the China-Australia relationship. Intellectually, I was on cloud 9. Ethically and philosophically, however, I was dying on the inside. I didn't realize at the time, but my world had changed again, and in my dream job, I couldn't see any diversity in leadership. Time and time again, leaders who had 30 years experience on me were treating the bond between Australia and China as, at best, a transaction, and at worst, with unconscious racism. I was devastated, working 80-hour weeks and not helping anyone but the self-interests of a handful of businessmen. After 6 months in my dream job, I ended up burnt out and with clinical depression. Tip 4, be aware of your dreams. Hold them tightly, but not so tightly that they hold you and they hurt you. I've realized the values which are deal breakers for me, and that as much as you want something to fit your dream, it is not always able to do so. I stuck it out for a full year and then I fired myself from my dream job. But you see, I was baking an idea. As that disappointment was cooking my insides, I knew I needed more data to fix it. I asked the smartest people I knew what they thought was missing in Australia's relationship with China. They said innovation, optimism, human connection, young people, collaborative problem solving, diverse ideas, trust and empathy. I asked them to give me their vision for Australia and China in 2050. No one said making more money from coal and iron ore. So I knew I was onto something. And it was by staying agile, honing my purpose, being aware of my dreams, and starting my own enterprise that I was able to reach new heights that my previous job simply could not. Since firing myself back then and feeling the lowest that I've ever felt, you guys always tapped on the shoulder to attend dinner with Premier Xi Jinping and have lunch with Jack Ma. There's something to this. Tip 5, use the problem to build the solution. Unless you're part of the problem, you can't hope to be part of the solution. So in that crucible, that little dark pit inside my gut, was forged a new enterprise, which I co-founded, the China-Australia Millennial Project. It's a cross-border, socially responsible, startup enterprise builder. We incubate thousands of deep relationships between young people, business and governments in both China and Australia. We use the gaps and barriers we knew shouldn't exist to craft permeable, collaborative structures for Australia-China cooperation at scale. We realised how simple it is to create diversity and capitalise on differences when you really want to. Now finally, tip 6, it's a bonus one, I'll give it to you for free. My lucky last tip for you is to trust your gut. At this stage of life, a lot of people will tell you who you must be, what to do, and the societal expectations of what you should be doing. You and only you are the constant in your life. You and only you feel that rush of neurotransmitter when you are faced with the misery of a job you don't like or the euphoria of having impact. You and only you are accountable for the decisions you make in your life. Now, I stand here on the shoulders of giants, and I feel barely able to fit on this stage from all of the invisible supporters who stand here with me, who got me here. You can't see them, I know that, but I've just told you the things that they've taught me since I sat in your seat trying to balance the funny hat and walk in high heels. But they taught me how to survive life after graduation. Keep yourself agile, learn and embrace Mandarin, find your purpose and you'll change the world. Be aware of your dreams. Use the problem to build the solution you want to see. And finally, trust your gut. I wish you the very best on your lifelong journey of becoming you. Congratulations. 恭喜你们.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the University, I'd like to thank Ms. Myles for what I'm sure you will agree was a truly inspirational occasional address. Thank you. The formal part of the proceedings has now been completed. The academic procession is about to leave the Great Hall, and the new graduates are invited to join the procession. I would be pleased if all guests would remain in their places until the procession has left the Great Hall. Would you all please rise for the academic procession?